Hi and welcome, I'm Andy Miocic and you are watching Context. As the war in Ukraine rages on, French President Emmanuel Macron has urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree to a ceasefire in their first known talks since 2022. According to the Élysée, Macron called for the establishment of a ceasefire as soon as possible and the launch of negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow for lasting resolution to the conflict. The Kremlin stated that Putin told Macron the war is a direct consequence of the policies of Western states and warned that any peace agreement in Ukraine must be long-term. The White House said that it had cut off some weapons deliveries to Ukraine, adding the decision was taken to, quote, put America's interests first. Ukraine reacted, saying that an interruption of U.S. weapons shipments might encourage Russia to continue the war. Meanwhile, military data shows that Russia escalated its aerial strikes campaign on Ukraine while also stepping up its offensives on two fronts. To talk on the latest, we're joined by former diplomat Gustavo de Aristegui, coming to us from Rabat. Welcome, thank you so much for joining us. First, let's talk on the situation on the ground. It seems that Russians are trying to maximize gains in Ukraine right now. Some are saying that this is a push before the fall season. What do you make of the current situation? What does it signal in terms of a possible ceasefire?
As you can probably recall, some months back, there was a leak of a very sensitive document that was produced by the FSB, in which it was very clearly stated that they recommended President Putin not to accept any kind of ceasefire before January of 2026. This is very obvious. They believe, and those are the conditions that they have put on top of any kind of negotiating table, that they will never accept to negotiate any kind of territorial gain that they have made and consolidated since 2022. Of course, 2014, the occupation and the annexation of Crimea is off the table, and that there is no doubt about that. But I'm talking about whatever territorial gains that were made since 2014, throughout those years, and after the war began in 2022. There is a rough calculation, which I think is not exactly precise, but it's the only one that we have, that every day the war is prolonged, the Russians are able to control the equivalent of 80 football fields every day. And this amount of territory that is conquered illegally and annexed illegally is territory that the Russians firmly believe that will not be on the negotiating scheme. So all of this that you're seeing, this ongoing offensive, is just trying to consolidate their positions when the Americans are going to be a little more free. The Iranian issue is more or less solved. Well, let's hope that there is going to be some kind of negotiation sometime soon. President Trump is forcing Netanyahu, as we speak, for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza. We know that Netanyahu is going to be in Washington next Monday. I will be there too. So if we speak next week, it will be from Washington. And in any case, what you can be sure of is that right now, the last priority of the Trump administration, as far as wars and conflicts are concerned, is the Ukraine war. But in any case, the Americans will eventually force the Russians to stand down and to accept some kind of negotiation. And the Russians will say yes, but we will keep whatever we have gained in or occupied in all of these years. Hence, this offensive.
That might be, but for now, the news coming out of Washington is that the U.S. is halting some of the weapons shipments to Kyiv over concerns of their own stockpiles declining. Ukraine says that might encourage Russia. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's very imprudent and very uncautious to make this public. Normally, all of these things are extremely classified. And when you tell a country that perhaps it's not cannot be considered an ally, but it is a friend that has been receiving American aid for many years now, you will not say publicly that you are not going to supply the Patriots that, by the way, President Trump promised President Zelensky when they met on the sidelines of the NATO summit. So all of this is going to be very seriously, very cautiously, very carefully calibrated by the Russian military intelligence, and they will know exactly where they can go. But there's a couple of things that must be said. The Patriot missile batteries that the Americans have engaged to send, I think that those are going, okay? The problem is to resupply certain offensive systems that were given to the Ukrainian forces. For example, the HIMARS. The HIMARS that have been a nightmare for the Russians. And let us not forget that in all of this time, since the Ukrainian Air Force has been trained to use the Polish MiG-29s that have nothing to do with the Russian MiG-29s anymore, because the avionics, the weapon systems, and everything are Western. It's only the airframe that is Russian, or the F-16s that have been supplied by different NATO allies, or the Mirage 2000s that were supplied by France. Whenever there is a dogfight over the Ukrainian skies, the Russians chicken out. And the other day, there was this news, it was the news, because one Ukrainian F-16 had been shot down, but he had been shot down after shooting down seven Russian aircraft. So the skies have been regained by Ukrainians, which is something new, and that is not going to change anytime soon. While the Ukrainians have air superiority in their country, the Russians will not be able to make major gains in the heart of Ukraine, only in the nearby territories where they have established very solid strongholds.
You spoke on the dangers of U.S. disclosing such information. Do you see the Europeans potentially stepping up to fill the gap?
Well, let us say that for example the Polish have sent their Patriot missiles over to Ukraine in a very generous gesture. I don't think that other countries that are as close to Russia are going to do the same, because it would be very imprudent. There was talk in Germany about sending German Patriot missiles over to the Ukrainians. The Spanish have Patriot missiles in Estonia and in Romania. Okay, eventually they could always serve as a shield, as a backup shield for the Ukrainian air defenses. And finally, one must not forget that if push comes to shove, the fighter jets are equipped to shoot down missiles if they can intercept them. One last thought about operational details. The Ukrainians have been developing their own systems to protect them from suicide drones, especially those that are conceived, designed, produced, engineered in Iran. Okay, this piece of military hardware is extremely dangerous. The most dangerous part of it are the Russian invention of the optic fiber cable guided drones. These are the most effective ones against troops, tanks, and armored vehicles. And even those are being effectively countered by the Ukrainians, because they are very seriously advancing in conceiving, designing, and producing new methods and new weapon systems. So right now, it might be maybe a week or two, and as you very well said, the Europeans are stepping up. Of course, they cannot fill the shoes of the United States because they're huge shoes to fill. But in any case, let's not forget that the F-16s that are fighting in the airs in the skies of Ukraine, most of them come from NATO, European NATO members. A lot of them from Holland. As I said, the Polish MiG-29s that are anything but Russian anymore, and the French Mirage 2000. And we're talking about third-generation planes, and they're beating fourth-generation Russian planes.
Let's step away from the operational capabilities for now. Macron and Putin spoke on Ukraine. Both sides said they are seeking a lasting resolution. What could that resolution look like, in your opinion, given the situation on the ground?
Again, let's go back to the basics. The Russians have been playing with the idea of forcing the Ukrainians to accept the conditions that they were throwing at the face of the Ukrainians just before the invasion took place in 2022. Remember what happened? They said, we want a denazification, whatever that means, which is completely preposterous, of course. They want the neutralization of Ukraine. They want the demilitarization of Ukraine, and they want to keep everything that they have already gained. I mean, those are conditions that are red lines for the Ukrainians. If there is some kind of agreement, it is obvious that both parties will have to cede. Probably the Ukrainians will have to accept that Crimea is never going to go back to their sovereignty. They will have to accept that some parts of the Donbass region have been incorporated forever into the Russian Federation. But what is obvious also is that the Russians cannot expect to be able to keep everything that they have illegally conquered in these 3 years. And lastly, the neutralization of Ukraine imposed by Russia, as they did in 1946 with Finland, is obviously unacceptable. There is a part of the Western world that, bizarrely enough, is aligned with some of the positions of President Putin, saying that the only way to obtain a lasting peace is to force the neutrality of Ukraine. It is for the Ukrainian people to decide that, not for the Europeans.
We even heard the Slovak official saying maybe Russia should be forgiven. In another development in the broader region, an audio tape and a letter surfaced which media here in Azerbaijan claimed contain an order and admission of deliberate targeting of the Azerbaijani airliner that crashed in Kazakhstan in December over Chechnya. Baku has always maintained the plane was hit by Russian air defenses. But now several Russian outlets, most notably The Insider, have confirmed the leaked materials. What do you make of that situation?
I mean, we've been following very carefully what has been going on in your country recently, and the arrests that have been made, and the claims that there is an illegal foreign intervention in your nation. Your country is a sovereign nation. Your country is a nation that has a very clear cultural, national identity, a language, a religion, a history. Anybody that wants to interfere Azerbaijan or try to submit Azerbaijan to becoming a lame duck in the hands of the Russian geostrategy or politics is completely wrong. And it's completely illegal, and it is preposterous, because I strongly believe that your nation is never going to allow that. This said, as an introduction, what I believe that the Russians are doing, anybody that does not accept to become a neutral state, a satellite state, or a lapdog state, like is the case of Belarus, allow me to use such a harsh term. anybody that doesn't accept any of these three positions or any of these three possibilities is going to be targeted by the Russian intelligence and by the Russian regime. Remember what happened to MH17,
Yes,
Malaysian Airways.
17, yeah.
17. Sorry, the flight. It was obvious that it was pro-Russian militias that shot it down. Now it is proven that your aircraft was shot down by Russian air defenses. And why did they do it? It was very obviously a maneuver to intimidate Azerbaijan, to try to force Azerbaijan into compliance. And last but not least, let's not forget that your regional problems, and I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't want to draw fire of controversy, has been in the eye of the storm of the Russian strategy. They have helped your rival neighbor, enemy neighbor, call it as you wish, in a way that let's call it the great Orthodox unity has shown its face once again. Instead of trying to be a neutral, positive actor in a region and trying to present themselves as they are trying to present themselves in some other countries as a peacemaker, as a mediator, they have been helping people, a country, to attack you and your interests. And that has a double reason. One is ideological, because they believe that creating this string of countries that are their allies around Russia is going to satisfy and guarantee their security. And on the other hand, they want to make sure to send a message, a very clear message, that if you're not part of that world that they firmly believe in, it's the new Russian nationalism, the one that was already made reborn by Stalin in 1943, because he saw that his troops were not enthusiastic enough in the war against the Germans, so he invented the term the Great Patriotic War, and then he recovered the term that was completely banished in Soviet terminology, Rodina, the fatherland, the motherland. And I believe firmly that all of these things that you're seeing are a very clear strategy to try to intimidate Azerbaijan into becoming submissive.
Gustavo, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That's all we had for you in this edition of Context. But stay tuned to A News.